Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is Friday, which is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. I am hoping to get chapters from you from either plot. Your work will be extra videos, but everything else will be the same for my viewers. I will label chapters from plot 1 as season 1 and plot 2 as season 2, as I've said before. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your tangible chapter with permission, with written permission, to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video. Please do not send Google Docs. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters, even if I can't read them all on the channel. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is also PG-13, so if you're under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last story we heard. The title of this story is Tajiia, and today we are reading chapter 8. If you would like to read along, then send to the email address I stated above and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you're specific about either City of the Ancients or Tajiia and which chapter. Let's start. Tajiia, Chapter 8, Mom. In the morning, Tajiia said the harder spell and made herself look invisible to everyone else but visible to herself. She had a dome over herself and she could see everything in the dome. It was actually very much like the air wall that she used yesterday, except for the shape. Arthur noticed her disappear, but he didn't see the grass around her moving, so he thought she was just invisible. He scanned south of them and didn't see or sense soldiers. Tajiia set up and retrieved her present. She successfully untied the bow very carefully and then unwrapped the small wooden box. Tajiia recognized the box as a puzzle box right away, so she slid the different pieces until she finally got it to open. Inside was a beautiful silver bracelet with pearl beads dangling from several lengths around the bracelet. Tajiia slipped it on and admired it. Then she noticed a different piece dangling down. It was a silver oval, but it had a pattern on it, and the pattern on the oval made the oval look like a rose with petals that rose up from the oval's surface. Tajiia took the bracelet off to examine that piece. As she stared at the rose seemed to open up to a mirror-like surface. Tajiia gazed in the mirror. "Oh, I wonder what this is for," Tajiia whispered to herself. She rubbed her thumb across it. Tajiia received a message. "Who holds this bracelet?" Tajiia answered, "I am Tajiia." "Tajiia, just a minute." This puzzled Tajiia, but she waited. "All is clear. Do you have magic enough to expand the view?" came the thoughts. Tajiia said some things over the bracelet until the oval expanded into a bowl that fit down into her lap. She stared in the bowl, and now the surface looked like water more than a mirror. "Oh, Tajiia, my baby girl, you have grown so much. I didn't think you were 12 yet." Tajiia pushed her eyebrows together. "I don't think I am quite 12, but so many things have happened in the last several days that I had to get the gift out of the house. Who are you?" "I'm Mykela. I am your real mother." "Where are you?" "Do not worry, Tajiia." "Where are you? I need you. My mom and dad both have died. The soldiers broke down the front door." "Oh no, Tajiia, the soldiers should not have you." "No, Mom, they don't have me. Where are you?" Tajiia thought again. Tajiia, I am in prison. I've been here the last 2 years. Prison? Like at the castle? Tajiia, I can't get to you. You need to contact the stand-in queen of the witches. Her name is Arshwea. Oh, I've got to go. I hear the soldiers coming. I love you, sweetheart. The bowl shrank down and once again looked like an oval piece of silver attached to a bracelet. Tajiia tucked it away in a hidden pocket. She wasn't 12 yet, so she wouldn't wear it. Tajiia reversed the invisibility spell and went straight to Arshwea. Arshwea, we have to go to the castle and get my mother out of prison. Arshwea was instantly awake. The castle? We can't go there. We have to. They have my mom, insisted Tajiia. Arshwea glanced to the squirrel. Then she looked at Tharkek, who had sat up. When Arshwea looked at Raisler, she remembered the book. If only she could have read the book, then she would know more. Tharkek reached over and touched her arm. She has helped us. Let us help her. Besides, with all the soldiers in the villages and in the woods, started Artur. There won't be many left for the castle. No heroics, though, stated Chancellor Karlt. Just in and out. Arshwea sighed. Okay, Tajiia. Talk to a bird or two. Raisler, are you going? Raisler nodded. Yes, I'm going. 4 birds, please, stated Arshwea. Chancellor said no heroics, stated Artur. You will be okay, correct? Asked Arshwea. Yes, but you have to make it back, stated Artur. If there are too many soldiers, then turn back. Nothing connects the prisons to the castle, so don't go in the castle. And no one has said anything about the wizards not being at the castle. Arshwea nodded as she saw 4 birds landing. All were small blue birds. Soon the 4 of them were small and tied to the birds and flying off. All 4 knew that the birds being so small, they would have to stop many times before they arrived at the castle. Artur watched them fly off. Well, let's start walking, he said. Someone make sure the air wall is gone, and then I want us practicing our spells. We need Chancellor Karlt to keep up with who is working spells when and for how long, and I want us invisible for the next hour. Chancellor had paper, and he had been keeping track of some of it since he joined the group, but he didn't always know who was working the spell. Now, with Artur's instructions, people would let him know. The wall was indeed gone, and they headed out. I have a question, stated Basil. I have the same question, asked Wormex. And I think if we use grains, then no, there is no second spell to reverse things if the time ran out. But Tajiia would have to reverse her wall unless she knew the exact time. He motioned. And they both looked at Visor, their mentor, and asked, Is that right? Visor nodded. Then how is that better? Asked Bollock. 2 spells versus 1 spell? No math for one thing, stated Tola. I mean, knowing 360 grains for 1 minute doesn't mean I automatically know how many grains for 3 or 4 minutes. What if I need 7 minutes? What if you don't know how long you needed the spell? Put in Camille, Tola's mentor. Right, replied Tola. Could you work 2 spells at once that way? Put in Ozzy. Well, started Artur. We're not Tajiia. And she did say something about complicating time. I don't remember exactly how she put it, but she mentioned something. And she doesn't talk much. She doesn't speak much. Well, I could have used time before I was rescued, put in Wagler. I could have done an air wall, assuming I knew that spell, and had time on that one. And then all the defense and attack spells I could have used could have been normal. Perhaps, stated Artur. But you were not with us when Tajiia gave the warning. I think I need to write those things down, too, put in Chancellor Wildcoral. Try to remember her words. Several nodded, and the rabbit and the squirrel thought to anyone listening that they, too, would try to remember. They continued without much talking, except someone saying they would try the invisibility spell next, or to ask what word they needed for invisibility. After they had ridden a while, Arshwaya thought Arthur was the only warlock known to have escaped the prisons under this king. She thought Arthur should have come with them. Once they got to where they could see the castle wall, the bluebirds stopped once again in a tree. Tajiia got them all off the birds and thought to the birds her thanks. She thought to the other three, "The birds are too big. We're shrinking to ride bees." Before they could say or think anything, they were shrinking even smaller. Soon 10 bees came, and Tajiia attached them to 4 of the bees. The bees didn't fly straight, but they flew in circles and buzzed here and there, but the soldiers thought it was normal behavior. Finally, they flew in between the bars of the window at the end of the prison hall. The bees landed on the bars and then flew to the next cell until Tajiia found her mother halfway down the hall. The bomb didn't know what to think when she shrank and floated up. She did her best not to make any noise. When she saw Tajiia, she threw her hands over her mouth. Tajiia looked down the hall. She heard a noise. She didn't normally put an air wall farther and in the same direction as the original background, but she had to do something. She didn't want the soldier to come in the door and find them or her mother gone. The soldier approached the new door, and everyone in Tajiia's group froze as the footsteps stopped just past the door to the prisons. The soldier was confused because he couldn't find the door to the prisons. But he turned around and paced back the other way. Tajiia received, "There are more prisoners. Let us take the other 10. We're seeing if anyone knows the identity of the 11th prisoner." Tajiia didn't protest. Arshwaya, Tharkek, and Raisler worked at making the other prisoners small and floating them up to them. They each had to try a couple times to get the prisoners small enough, and all the prisoners knew not to make sounds. When Tajiia heard the last person was a soothsayer, she whispered, "Leave him. He is a trap for us." Then she quietly said a spell over the soothsayer in case he decided to say what happened to the prisoners. The spell wouldn't kill, but he would lose his tongue and his ability to speak. 10 people had to double up, and 5 rode a bee by themselves. The 15 people and the 10 bees buzzed out of the prison window at the end of the hall. As they flew out the window, Tajiia heard a soldier walk into the wall she made. She thought a minute and realized, yes, she had made it invisible, so the other soldier could see the door the next time he went down the hall. This soldier just walked into the wall and fell back before she reversed the spell. Tajiia felt they had to be extra careful now because the soldier would tell someone and they would find the prisoners empty, except for the soothsayer. And although the soothsayer seemed like he was sleeping, Tajiia knew he could be Tajiia knew he could be pretending. That's what her mother always told her. You don't know what a person knows or observes. You only know what you know and observe. Never assume otherwise. The bees buzzed around a few soldiers just like they would normally do, and no one relaxed until the bees flew over the castle wall. Tajiia looked back at the castle gate several times until she could no longer see it. She thought to the bees to just fly to their hive and they would find another ride from there. She didn't want to change to a bird too close to the castle. Castle made her really nervous, not only from the way it felt, but also from the soldier walking into her wall. Granted, it gave her an idea to leave the air wall flat on the floor, but it also alerted the soldiers to their presence. Balak had done more for her than she knew. She had never left herself connected to her walls before, but last night Balak kept wanting to touch it, so she decided she wanted to see if she could feel, and thus know what he did. She decided that might be good information to have. And with the soldier today, she knew she was right. Now, as they walked back and forth to the prisons, she could gain information. Tajiia Ch realized right away that they weren't flying the same way they had come. But he didn't think too much about it. It took Raisler longer to realize. But they had drawn a map yesterday, so he didn't worry about it. Excuse me. When they landed on clovers in a field, Tajiia slid them down to the ground, enlarged them a little, and thanked the bees. "We have to be careful," she said to everyone. "The castle knows the prisoners are gone, and they're bringing the soothsayer to the king's advisors to see what he knows. That's why we couldn't change to a bird right away." No one said or asked anything, and soon 5 grackles landed. They went about pecking the ground until Tajiia had them all tied on. Then the grackles took off, one at a time, since that was what they normally did, and Tajiia had thought to them to act as normal as possible. They stopped several times as the grackles landed and pecked the ground. Then on their third stop, a grackle thought to Tajiia that they normally didn't fly too much farther east. Tajiia thought that was fine, and she floated them all down. The rescued prisoners were unsure what to think, especially since the grass was more than twice as tall as they were. Several of them bent their necks to look up to the height of the grass. Arswaya trusted Tajiia, but she wanted to calm the group. She gently touched Tahia's arm. "Dear, what is going on?" "Birds fly all through the woods, so if birds only stay in a certain area, no one really knows," replied Tajiia. "I know, but the birds don't talk to the soldiers. Here the birds only fly in an area until season changes. I want the birds to appear normal. I think an eagle is flying in, but to be normal he will have to catch a rabbit or a rodent. I'm floating us closer to the water." The eagle thought more animals would be near the water. As she said this, they all floated in the air and floated east. Arswaya just shook her head to herself. Apparently Tajiia was using extreme caution for them and the animals. Then Arswaya started thinking about how Tajiia knew they were questioning the soothsayer. Tajiia, I'm not questioning you. Balak helped me. It is a strange way to know things, but it is working, replied Tajiia. You must let Balak know the value of his helping. Arswaya glanced over to Tajiia Ch and Raisler. They shrugged their shoulders. "You will teach us, won't you?" she asked. "When we get to the mountains, you will teach us." "Yes, after I learn, I will teach. I need to read my books again. I read them every year." "Where are your books?" Akel asked suddenly. Akela. There's an A at the end of her name. I never pronounce it. "Where are your books?" Akela asked suddenly. "They're not in the house, are they?" Tajiia shook her head. "No, they're buried in the woods." "We should get them," stated Raisler. "Can you have our trip detour into the woods?" Tajiia looked at Raisler. "I guess so." She looked at her mom. "No one was supposed to know. Now they do." "It's okay, dear. Only you can read them." No one said anything else. Artur looked to the sky. It was nearing noon. He didn't know how to estimate how much time to expect them to be gone. From the stories of the other groups, he knew that the birds didn't fly straight to a destination because they stopped and rested often. He didn't even think the group might ride bees. He glanced around his group while they were visible. Girton was raising his hand to go next, and several minutes later the group blinked out of sight. While they walked invisibly, some linked hands, so they didn't lose everyone. But some in the back just watched the grass and followed the trail of bending grass. Tahia's group landed near the water, and soon they saw an eagle diving down from high up in the sky. They could see the eagle in the distance, and they felt themselves floating up in the air, and then they sailed north a bit, and then Tajiia magically tied them on the eagle. Tajiia thought with the eagle about the detour. The eagle ate part of the rabbit it killed. until it sensed predators near. So it scooped up the rabbit and flew away. Anyone looking on would have thought the eagle was behaving perfectly normally. They landed in the woods north of Tajiia's home. It was the section that had spread west. They landed near the spot. Tajiia was trying to sense around her like she always did, but she kept feeling people. She looked behind her at the rescued prisoners, and they were watching her every move. Mykela realized what was bothering her daughter. Tajiia, dear, you will never replace the books here, so it is okay if we know where you hid them. Tajiia turned back and opened the cubby hole. When she looked inside, the books were much bigger and heavier than she was, so she shrank them down smaller than she was, so the whole stack of 13 books fit in the palm of her hand. She put them in a secure pocket and closed the cubbyhole. Tajiia tied everyone on the eagle, and they waited for the eagle to finish his meal before they resumed their flight and their course. Artur's group turned visible just before the eagle landed on his shoulder. "Ow, ow, ow," he said as he got a leather cloth out from a pocket. "Here, get on my arm," he said. "Your claws are too sharp." Tajiia floated the group down and spread them out a bit before she reversed the small spell. Artur was surprised and jumped back slightly when 15 people became normal size before him. He had only expected 5. He looked at Arshwea. "We felt while we were rescuing we might as well pick up a few more," she said to his unspoken question. "It's not like we were short on bees." "Bees?" asked Artur. "I see an eagle." "You must have been really small," stated Ozzy. She clasped Alla's hand. "We want to ride a bee." Alla was shaking her head and pulling back, but she stopped herself from thinking fear and pictured Ozzy's flame in her mind instead. "Who wants to ride a bee?" put in Bollock. "I want to ride an eagle." Raisler thought of the dragon egg that prophecy said the new queen would find and hatch. Tajiia turned to him and opened her eyes wide. "Picture it. I want to see it," she said to Raisler. All in the circle looked at Raisler, and Raisler realized that Tajiia could now get his thoughts with ease. He tried to picture a dragon in his mind, but he only saw fragments of sketches. It had been a long time since anyone sighted dragons. Artur glanced around and then got them all walking again. He counted in his head. They had 38 people, and now they added 11 more. He would be glad when they got to the mountain caves. They would be much safer. Artur knew that kings of the past had magic, or had loyal magic users who would use birds to spy, but he wasn't sure this king did. Still, the safer assumption would be this king did. With such a large group, they would be easier to spot, so he would make sure to get the next person to start the spell as soon as possible. They no longer worried about counting. It was too hard to count seconds for 2 or 3 minutes, and they weren't getting the same numbers, so counting was nearly fruitless. As they walked, Bollock slowly made his way closer to Tajiia. Finally, he was close enough, so he asked her, "When you use Sands of Time without grains, then do you have to reverse the spell or say a spell to undo it?" "Mostly I use grains," stated Tajiia. "I didn't want anyone to discover my spells. Reversing it doesn't take much magic." "If you think of a spell like trying to hold the wind, then reversing it would be like releasing the wind." Bollock nodded his head very slowly, but he wasn't sure he understood. He certainly didn't think he could hold the wind. Varant leaned down and said quietly, "That was her point. When you say spells, you have to hold concentration. But when you release your concentration, the spell comes undone automatically." She was comparing the hardness and easiness of the two different things. "Do you always do math?" asked Tola, who was near. She glanced at her mentor, Camille. "I mean, that would take more time to say the spell." Tajiia shook her head. "No, sometimes I just pick a big number." Mykela looked at Arshwea and asked, "Sands of Time? Grains?" Arshwaya nodded. Let us listen now, and we could talk later. Sometimes I just pick Wasidit, stated Tajiia. I know it's not 5 hours, but it is more than 4. Sidit? Asked Tola. She looked at Ozzy and then back at Tajiia. I don't remember that number. Unit, put in Raisler. Let's see. She taught us D, C, Deet, and that's 10 and 100 and 1,000. So D Deet would be 10,000 and C Deet would be 100,000. And, well, I'm not sure what the next unit would be. Yes, you're right, replied Tajiia. I don't remember the next unit in human, but it is seat, then D seat and C seat. When we were working spells, started Merrick, there didn't seem to be any real difference in the amount of magic between Trasin Sadin and Wadit Achasin. Would there be more of a difference if I used Wasidit? Tajiia looked around. She once again thought about how many people were surrounding her. I don't feel as much difference in time as in different spells, but I don't really use small numbers. Tajiia glanced around again. I just like the easy number, and then I reverse it when I'm done. She looked at Bollock. Yes, I have to pay attention to the time when I'm getting close to the end. I don't want a spell to suddenly come undone. Well, all this talk isn't making us invisible, stated Artur. This king may or may not have spy birds, but we shouldn't chance it. Someone needs to say the spell, and then we can walk and talk. The soothsayer lost his tongue, put in Tajiia, and soldiers have caught fire. So the paranoid king is nervous, but he doesn't talk to animals. Tajiia glanced around again. She wanted to talk to her mother and get advice, but she continued. What I want to know is, does the king know where you go to hide when you hide? He might very well know, stated Artur. The mountains to the north are closer to us, and we enter in the southwestern edge, and we hide all through the mountain. But we have witches and warlocks in the mountains to the south, the east, and the west as well. He thought about telling her how they used to divide themselves in smaller groups and how the tree meeting was once a year instead of once a month, but he saved that conversation for a different day. Tajiia slightly nodded, and she received Artur's extra thoughts, but she didn't think on them now. We have a couple days, I hope, for the king to decide how to pursue us. Maybe more if they decide to read the stones. Bollock, you were going to use invisibility? I can barely light the candle, stated Bollock. I saw you hold light, stated Tajiia. What was the word for invisible? Asked Bollock reluctantly. Osman, stated Tajiia. She looked at Ozzy and Telka. Oi is for eye, and ois is for sight. Oh, said Telka. Visible is, well, visible, and invisible is not visible, so Osman is no sight. No or none, replied Tajiia. Telka looked at her mentor. If you learn the language or the parts of the language, well, I like this. Belshum laughed. I'm glad. I'm enjoying learning too. We all want to know how you didn't get burnt by your fire, stated Ozzy. She glanced at her cousin Bollock because she knew he wanted to ask. Tajiia wrinkled her forehead. What do you mean? Started Ozzy as she started to point. Then she looked at Merc. Well, I forgot some words, and others didn't, and their fires were hot. Started Tajiia. Again, she looked at her mother and wanted advice. Akel glanced at Arshwaya. Go ahead and show off, stated Raisler. Before you leave your house each day, or after you get up, don't you say, Oma trutal omis trostial bulstes egua torchul. Sorry, I should be saying this smoothly. Egua Troclukla, Diklur Egwa. And then at the end of the day, don't you say, Oma trutal omis trostial gratlas olvan pat olvans bulstustan? Asked Tajiia. She looked around the group. Everyone stared blankly at her. Mom? Asked Tajiia. Mykela shook her head. Sweetheart, we don't know those words. Well, most of those words we don't know. Tajiia looked to the ground and continued walking. The group could feel Tajiia's loneliness, but didn't know how to comfort her. Artur cleared his throat. Okay, Balak, you were trying the invisibility spell? I guess, replied Balak. He recited the words in his mind, and then he said them. Everyone blinked away for half a second, and then reappeared. Balak looked around, startled. Do you use sands of times and grains? Asked Varant. Maybe he used a number less than 6 grains, teased Ozzy. Balak put his hand to his head. Oh no, I forgot that part. Do you want to try again? Asked Varant. Artur just looked up to the skies. He would have to watch for birds and ask Tajiia to speak with them. No, said Balak. Someone else can go. They started taking turns. As they walked, Arshwaya asked Mykela for her story, and no one was really practicing as everyone wanted to listen. Well, the important part probably starts when I was 8 or 9, and my sister Giselle was 7 or 8. My parents took us to see a psychic. I believe they're one step above a soothsayer. In knowledge and accuracy, yes, they are, replied Arshwaya. Anyway, I went in, and she told me that I would be the mother of the next queen. Tajiia glanced back at the pair, but she kept walking, and only Artur really noticed her glance. Then, continued Mykela, my sister went in, and the psychic told her the same thing. My mother said we probably didn't have enough information to understand, and not to worry about it, and certainly not to fight about it. I tried to figure it out for a while, but the circumstances were never good, so I gave it up. About 4 or 5 years later, my sister married, and her husband moved into a village and settled down, and they didn't travel with us anymore. This was a time before the present king, where sometimes even villagers moved to different villages and they went to visit family. So my sister and her husband being new to a village wasn't too strange. But shortly after that, King Moldstone came to power, and that stopped all the moving and visiting. Yes, I remember, stated Arshwaya. We were visiting an aunt, and we left hours before the soldiers closed the village for fear witches and warlocks were on the road. We got word to leave the road, and we did in time, but we watched from the woods as the soldiers cut people down. We went into hiding at that point. Yes, I did too, and for a long time I forgot about the prophecy. Until about 9 or 10 years later. I had been married about 1.5 years and found myself pregnant. As soon as I learned that, I thought again about the prophecy, and I started thinking that having a baby on the run wouldn't be good. I thought I might could sneak the baby to my sister in her village. Then things went really badly before the baby was born. The soldiers slaughtered my entire group, including my husband. I'm not sure how I escaped. That's okay, said Arshwaya, as she put her hand on Mykela's arm. Many in this group could say the same thing about a couple of days ago. We're here. You're here. Continue with your story. Well, I stayed in hiding and tried to get close to my sister's village before the due date. A few weeks after I had Tajiia, I was able to slip in my sister's village and in her house. Thankfully, my sister had a back door. Anyway, I waited to slip in until the midwife left. My sister's baby was very weak and not expected to make it through the night. Well, you can guess the rest of the story. The baby didn't make it, and I left in the morning with the promise to bury the body. And my sister kept and raised Tajiia. We are both the mother of the future queen. Tajiia turned around. I'm not the future queen. She glanced at Artur and saw him scanning the sky. She instantly said the spell to turn them invisible, and then she turned and continued walking. Artur noticed immediately that everyone was invisible. I don't expect that she's still standing there. I don't think distance is really an issue, put in Raisler. No, stated Tharkek, but we need to stay together. Everyone continued walking again. Arswea grabbed Akela's hand so she would know where Akela was. She leaned closer and whispered, Tajiia isn't used to being around people, and we suspect that she speaks witch much better than human. Akela squeezed Arswea's hand and then said in a normal voice, As it turned out, the circumstances were not good for either my sister or me. My sister's daughter died at birth, and I missed raising my daughter and being with her. Tajiia stopped and turned around. She reversed the spell only on herself and her mother. I need you, stated Tajiia. I can't do everything that these people want or need me to do. The whole group had stopped, and many looked down at their invisible selves many times. I'm here for you, stated Akela, as she opened her arms and Tajiia ran into her embrace. Both were crying. Arswea wanted to say that they were also there for her, but now was not the time. She wiped tears from her face. Many others in the group also wiped away tears, but no one saw them. After a few minutes, Tajiia took her mother's hand and said, Artur wants us walking, and Raisler wants to go to the mountains. Raisler says northeast, but I think we've gone east enough and should only head north. She turned herself and her mother invisible, and they continued walking. Akela held her other hand back to Arswea. Arswea caught it and walked with mother and daughter. Tola, Karmais, Telka, Ozzy, and Alla were walking with hands held in line. Telka leaned down to Ozzy and whispered, That story was sad. I know, replied Ozzy solemnly. She has her mother now, but she doesn't know her. The mother doesn't know Tajiia either, put in Tola. My sister is older, and she had a little girl a few years ago. I have enjoyed watching my niece grow. I will miss that now that we are heading to the mountains. That young age is so precious. Learning to crawl, learning to walk. Tola was smiling as she recalled her memories. They continued in silence past dusk. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 8. And that was quite a sad story there at the end of the chapter. Tajiia feels so lost around all these people, and she wants help. She used to ask her mother. She grew up with all sorts of things. Then when she read her book, she learned about her real mother. But she didn't know the full story, meaning her mother's history. This scene usually brings a tear or two to my eyes, and I'm sure you can see that my eyes watered up. Now, let's think of a few other things. One is, how would you feel or think if you were Artur when Arswea answered that they rescued more prisoners because they weren't short on bees? This statement astounds him. But he is a warlock, and he knows the possibility of shrinking. He even knows the possibility of riding a bird, since several in the group arrived to the group by riding a bird. But still, riding a bee was beyond his comprehensions or thoughts of possibilities. Second, think of how Balak helped Tajiia. I'm sure you thought it was all play when Balak walked into Tahia's wall, fell back. But now you see that Tajiia is using that information to help her learn about her enemy or their activities in the prisons. Balak walking to the air wall is now a connected scene. This is just fun stuff to see how a story comes together. And as a writer, like, I'm reading the story and I'm saying Akel, and I kind of like that name a little better than Akela. So I told y'all before, control find or control find replace or whatever. So I can take Akela and I can find and replace and put Akel and change the whole document. And that won't be an issue. I just have to decide for myself if that's what I want to do. And I'm thinking seriously about it because I keep reading Kel, and I like the sound of that better. So I think that's what I'm going to do with that name. We'll have to wait and see when I read the next chapter what I do. But this is fun stuff. This is how a story comes together. And I told you when you were finding names for City of the Ancients, I'm like, don't worry about it. You can change it later. You can change the spelling. You can change the whole name. You can change John to David. Whatever you want to do. Control, find, replace. You can replace it all. And I also told you in City of the Ancients, if you decided that you wanted a deer and a dog and a girl, that you could change the deer to a kangaroo. And so you just go Control, find, replace, done. So we have wonderful tools to use, and it makes it fun to where we don't have to stress about certain things. Join me Tuesday. We will discuss the weather. There hasn't been any rain in Tajiia yet, but they've had so many issues with dogs that a little rain may have been overwhelming. Still, every day can't be a sunny day unless you're in Texas and it's summer and it's triple digits. Then you're wishing for rain to cool things off. You get the point. So we will play with rainbows and snowstorms on Tuesdays. Join me Friday for Chapter 9 of Tajiia, Another Ride. In between video days, visit my website, WritewithMykela.com, and read character bios. You can meet Lola and Opal from Tajiia 1. One is a contestant, and one is a dragon. I've added some bios for City of the Ancients and Operatives. I know I need some bios for Tajiia. Chapter 9 currently, which is what we're reading next, Chapter 9 currently starts on page 89 of 238 pages. Like I said before, page numbers don't mean as much to me as word count, but that tells you we're getting close to halfway finished. I'm trying to figure out which story I will read for season 3, so that can be ready for you when it is time. I can't just end one season and then pick up another half-written book. I have to finish it. So I need time to get it ready and prepare it for you. So I have lots of creating to do. I hope you are enjoying writing your stories as much as I am. Don't forget to share your stories by sending them to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. That's the chapter exchange part, when you share your chapters with me. And it's also the fun part for me. And I know when I first started letting people read my stuff, I was kind of nervous. I thought they would not like it, or worried that they wouldn't like it, and wondered if they would be critical. So I'd give chapters out. I'm like, here's the rule. You can't not be my friend after this. So I was nervous, but I've grown to know that I can just share my work and not worry about all that kind of stuff. So I hope that you feel comfortable enough to share your work. And for some of you to let me read it on the channel, that would be really great for my viewers as well, to see how we can take the same plot and have all the action being so different. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with WritewithMykela. Bye for now.